So in today's video we'll be continuing taking a look at what if civilization started in another world. In the previous episode we witnessed the fall of the orange team, the rise of the purple and red teams, the discovery of new landmasses by both the cyan and the purple team, and so much more. I seriously recommend watching the previous video just to get a hang of what happened in this world, especially in this region here, and how the orange team collapsed, so yeah. But before we get into this video fully, I would like to announce that I've added a new layer that actually has all the civilization names. Yes, I've given them names, actual names, not just teams. And the names of these teams are on the screen. So the purple nation is called now Eteros, the red nation is called Wotin, the cyan nation is called Squets, the orange team was actually called Latros, the lime team is called Latsu, the green team is called Vagzash, the blue team is called Ikalga, and finally the teal team is called Himala. Moving further, we're going to start focusing on the southern regions of Eludia, aka this region, but we're going to focus on this region for now. Here. This is where the age of exploration kicks in first, as the individual called Chromos has wrote about his journeys to the king of the red team. Chromos writes to the king about how he explored around these regions, and this sparks a colonial frenzy from the red team, knowing what resources lie there. And Kronos has stated there's a lot of valuable resources to be found there, including diamonds, gold, platinum, as well as silver. Now, just like the real world, all of these materials are extremely valuable and have a lot of uses in this world. So this incentivizes the Wotins to actually explore and start settling these lands more. This leads to this whole area and region be explored by Wotin, and subsequently be colonized by Wotin. At first it starts off with little expansions over here in the east of Wotin, however quickly evolves into a colonial frenzy just to colonize more land because of their valuables, kind of like the gold rush. However, it does not stay in the Red Kingdom's borders. The Purple Nation, aka Etros, finds out about what Wotin has been doing, and they see this as them being challenged, because these regions of Etros, their eastern regions, are directly bordering Wotin, and if they will be cut off, then they will not be able to expand anymore, and the only way to expansion would be by declaring war on Wotin. This is not even stating that with these new minerals and materials that Wotin is going to have by colonizing these regions could be potentially jeopardizing Etros' success in actually dealing with Wotin. This is not even mentioning that the expansion of Wotin into these regions could potentially spell doom for Etros and their eastern borders, aka here, as these were controlled by the pink team prior to Etros invading them and stealing this part. This leads the purple team to discovering the rest of this region and actually making significant colonial expanses starting from here and following this river all the way up to here, before being noticed by Wotin. But before we're going to acknowledge what is going to happen between Wotin and Etros, we should look at Vagzash, because Vagzash themselves are going to start colonizing. So they'll first explore about this much of the region, even crossing this river all the way to the other side, and then they would colonize about this much land. Now, an important thing to note about Vagzash is that they did not expand in this southern region of Eludia, unlike Wotin and Etros. So after they get the news that Wotin and Etros, aka the red team and the purple team, are expanding and actively expanding into the south, their reaction is something like this. Yeah, so after that fiasco, they're going to start actively colonizing in this region as well. Or at least attempt, because they just don't have enough people willing to settle in these lands which they want to colonize. However, they do explore the rest of the south. So that is one benefit that the green team has made. However, because of this active colonization, Vagzash is becoming somewhat weak, and the people are going to start hating the government more, as they want the government to spend resources onto improving the well-being of the people. Moving somewhat away from south of Eludia into the west of Eludia, we see that Latros, Latsu, and Squets have formed the first alliance in the world. So this is the alliance that these three kingdoms have made, and this alliance is for protection against Vagzash, Wotin, and Etros, and maybe Ikalga. However, this alliance is mainly focused on defending against Etros, as Etros itself has been reformed into an authoritarian dictatorship, which is now an empire of its own, and this would be of play in their demise. Speaking of Etros themselves, they've seen how prolific it is to expand and explore more territories, as it could give hidden opportunities that you never knew existed, and this is why they're going to heavily start exploring the coast and even the interior of this new landmass they've just found. They eventually explore about this much territory before stopping, just because the people are really angry with the government and what Atros itself is doing. However, before stopping their colonization efforts, they would expand and explore just a little bit more land and even settle some more. Just a little bit, so our population doesn't get too mad. Right, guys? Right? Well, after doing just a little bit more settling and colonization, Atros has eventually doubled in size, and it was a little bit too late for Atros, as unknowingly why for the king, the populace basically hated him now. Sure, the king has tried to suppress the hate, but obviously, when you colonize about half of the continent you know, and you basically make and force your population to be resettled in these areas by the river and here as well, they would not like you that much. And with that said, the first revolutions in Atros have started to occur. To say how bad this was for Atros, it's to say nothing, as all of their army was on the border of Whatif, about to strike and take Whatif down. However, all of those troops mounted on the border have to be now redistributed in the empire to stop these rebellions. Seeing that Atros is not responding to any of these rebellions, seeing that there was nothing done by Atros about these rebellions, the rebels kept getting bolder and bolder, and more people kept joining them. For example, these two islands have been fully liberated from Atros by the rebels, as well as here the Sand Rebellion and the Orange Rebellion were getting more bolder and closer to the capital of Atros. Another revolution has happened, but not in a place where you would expect. Atros was definitely not expecting a revolution here, and this revolution has swept all of the inland territory that Atros had, as the workers here were basically very underpaid, and they were forced to make houses here, which led to the workers essentially rebelling away. Meanwhile, the Southern Rebellion was pretty successful, and they even have managed to take out 2 important cities, actually no, 3 important cities from Atros in their colony, essentially leaving them without any cities, which has caused this coast to be relatively and easily taken out by both the Pink and the Light Cyan Rebellion. Meanwhile, Whatif has declared war on Atros because they have seen the instabilities that Atros has to deal with, aka like most of their empire is gone. And the biggest reason as to why is that their soldiers are gone from the border. Not just like maybe like 50% or so, all of them. All of them have been sent to fight off these rebellions and reclaim their motherland. So because of this, Whatif is going to have basically such an easy time of invading Atros. At first they start off here taking out this land, then they just march and take down this city, and with that all of the south that Atros once controlled is basically under Whatif control. To add more salt to the wound, most of the soldiers that Atros has in their military right now are either unloyal and actually deserting the Atrosian military, or they lack a lot of experience, which is the main reason why the capital of Atros falls. And with that, Atros itself starts to basically crumble. Whatever power they even had is going to the rebels, and even the Steel Team joins in to kill Atros by taking this disputed island. And with that, the last place, the last bastion that Atros controls, this little island, is taken away by the Whatif Kingdom. However, the Emperor, the King of Atros, is nowhere to be seen, and no one knows where he went. At least no one from the old world. Oh yeah, it's world time. So remember the old expedition that Atros has sent out into the south of the ocean, but no one came back? Well, that was a lie. A group of sailors actually did come back, straight to the Emperor, about what they have found. The group of sailors have told the Emperor they have sailed all the way south to the end of the world, and at the end of the world there was an island, or a continent. They were not sure yet what it was, but it was definitely a landmass. And they've explored a little part of it. But as soon as they found their way back to the kingdom, they have told the Emperor that, and he actually believed them, and he even sent another voyage to these lands. And that voyage ended up discovering more land in this landmass, aka this island. So they have came back to Atros and have told the king about it. The king, being delighted about this, has actually started to colonize this land. Eventually the colony got up to this big until this episode has started, and it was really a secretive mission. Because even if someone else would discover about it, they could have told the whole world about it. And this would have sparked some questions from other kings and queens, like why did the Atrosian king not tell anybody about this? However, when the colonial frenzy has started, the Emperor has put a lot of emphasis on discovering all of this landmass. Eventually, after the colonial frenzy, the colony looked something like this. And this is still how the colony looks like after all of these rebellions in Atros itself. And remember how I said that the Etros king has disappeared from Etros itself and was never found again? Well, this is because he embarked on a journey all the way down south to his nation, his new nation. No longer shall Etros be Etros. All hail Aptorium. And now let's look at the treaty that is going to divide this region up that Eptos once controlled. Or should I say Aptorium. So the peace treaty looks something like this, aka nothing much has changed, except one thing. And that one thing is the unification of this island. So this island has been unified under the Blue Rebellion, or now as it is known as UNTAS. Not to be confused with smearing in Spanish, or for example butter in Romanian. They have called themselves UNTAS, as in their language this means unity. However, there is kind of a clause that before all of these revolutions the island was united either way. So yeah, the name is kind of ambiguous. But moving on, all of the previous rebellions got their independence, and their names are UNTAS, Anothert, Osktver, and Yeti. Well, after that spectacular collapse of Eptos, we're finally going to check what's happening in the north and the east. To start off, we're going to look what Icalga does, and they just explore more land, but they find the ocean. This gives them hope that there is something beyond this big desert. However, they're kind of wrong, but they're going to see that later. Eventually, after some time exploring, they've explored about this much land, and by the way, this I'm just going to mark off as they explored because there's really nothing here to explore except these mountains, so I'm just going to mark it off for them as they have explored this region. Afterwards, they just start colonizing this thin strip of savanna all the way up until they meet with Hamala, and that happens somewhere roughly over here. And they just make 2 more cities, which is one over here and one over here as well. And that basically concludes everything that Icalga has made in this episode. Actually, no, my bad. That's not everything that they have done. They have also made a spy network in Vagzash, or the Green Team. Now, moving away from Icalga, aka the Blue Team, to Himaya, aka the Teal Team, they are going to start exploring this hidden region. At first, they find nothing but ocean. However, after some time, they found this little island over here, and after some more time, they find this big peninsula over here, which they managed to connect with the territory that they have already explored over here. This is where they also have met the old Etrosian Empire, which has already fallen, and transformed into the Aptorium, aka this island here. They don't know about that yet. Moving away from this area, they have started to discover this land over here. Over time, they have explored about this much land before just stopping and taking a break, and they did take a break. A break in all of these colonies that they have settled themselves. Now, this is really important. Apparently, this bay is not a bay, but actually a ria. I never even heard of it before, but apparently it is. And because of that, they usually have a lot, and I mean a lot of fishes, which means that there's a lot of food. And that also means there's going to be a surplus of food, and that means that the population can grow at an astonishing rate. Yeah, this may be one of, if not the fastest growth a colony has ever experienced. And this colony even met up with Yeti. Overall, it is safe to say that Himala, this Teal nation, is probably the strongest nation in this world so far. Actually, I just counted and they have more important cities than Etros ever had, so they're definitely the strongest nation, maybe even the strongest yet. Now we will finally take a look at the south. So both Osktver and Yeti do not have much of a population themselves, thus they plan to change that. So there are 3 key reforms that both of these nations are going to do. The first reform is going to be the agricultural reform. This is going to apply to both of these nations. This would mean that they're basically going to become really agrarian and focus on food essentially. So that just like this colony here, their nations could start having more people. The second reform is going to be to pay families to have more children. This is going to help because the government is going to support the families that are going to have much more children with financial support, which is going to allow them to have many more children. And the final reform that's going to be instated in both of these nations is going to be that they're going to be democracies, not authoritarian states like the Eptos Empire or the Aptorium. and by the end of the year 127, they are going to have this many cities. So after all of those reforms, this is the population of the new states now, with Osktver getting 4 more cities and the Yeti getting 6 more cities. Overall, if you combine these two republics together, you're going to get a population boom of 3.5 times. So before there used to be around 4 important cities, now there's 14 important cities. So the final part we're going to take a look at before we end this video and episode is going to be the cultural map. So this here is the full cultural map. Now we obviously do not need this island as it's just going to be the Etros culture. Instead, we're going to focus on this old world. Now it could be a little bit hard to visualize all of the cultures and how they changed, so because of that I'm just going to turn off the world layer. Now it should be a little bit easier. And overall nothing much has changed except for the finding of the Eastern world and the colonization of the Eastern world by the Teal team aka Himala, and south of the Himala colony we can find the remnants of Etros and the countries that are now here because of it, which are Osktver and the Yeti, at least in the Eastern world. Or I guess you can count Anothert as the Eastern world, but nah, it's really not. In the west we can find that the Orange culture has significantly expanded south, and even has started to overtake the Etros culture that was here in the south. And yeah, the other cultures like the red culture, the green culture, the blue cultures have just expanded a little bit, and that's all. So yeah, that was the end of the video. Thank you for watching. If you want to support me, you can like and subscribe, and I don't think many have seen this plot twist coming, so yeah. And goodbye. Have a nice day.